Welcome to A Magical Life, Health, Wealth and Weight Loss. I'm your host, Magic Barclay, lead practitioner at Holistic Natural Health Australia and #1 best-selling author. In this podcast, I aim to give you practical tips on how to accelerate and sustain your health, increase your financial, spiritual and emotional wealth, and to look at something that haunts many of us needlessly, weight loss. In some episodes, I'll have guests available to give you even more tips, but in others, the floor is yours. Drop us a line at A Magical Life Podcast on Facebook and let me know what you would like to know more about. Now, sit back and enjoy, because it is time for you to create and truly discover a magical life. Welcome back to A Magical Life. I'm your host, Magic Barclay. Today, Jim Marshall joins us. Jim Marshall is a polymathic scholar and autodidact who has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multiple dimensions of human development. He received a classical education as an honour student at a Jesuit Military Prep School, was accepted into engineering school while still a junior in prep school, and attended college on an academic scholarship. He graduated college with a Bachelor of Science cum laude. While still an undergraduate, he began the study of alternative arts and sciences, which today would be described as transformational and holistic. He eventually became a professional practitioner and after a 28 years of formal education, had a long career as a human development engineer. Jim has integrated the best aspects of the most advanced techniques on the planet and expanded their limits by his own research and discovery. He has successfully treated and/or trained hundreds of clients over a 40-year career and is the inventor of Septemics. This bio is amazing, Jim. I'm going to jump straight in and welcome you. Now, Jim, I ask all my guests the same 3 questions. Everyone gives me some really different answers, and I'm really looking forward to yours. The first one is, what can your expertise do to accelerate health, be it physical, emotional, or spiritual?
I wrote this book, Septemics, to help people. Each of the 35 scales in the book provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, just finding out what level you, another person, or some group is at is by itself enlightening and beneficial. Finally, once you know the actual level of a person or group on any scale, you can improve that person or group by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior, and combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
That sounds great. And we talk about wealth here. Wealth is not just financial, but also emotional and personal wealth. So what are your top 3 tips to creating wealth?
Well, my first tip is you should get the book and read it and use it, because it will help you absolutely in creating wealth across many axes. So each scale is a different axis of human phenomena, and you can apply this book to any situation that might arise in the life of a human being, be it yours or another's. So if you're interested in becoming wealthy or increasing your income, you can easily find multiple scales in this book that will bear on that, some of them directly.
Sounds great. Now, Jim, have you ever battled your weight? We do talk about weight loss here, and people, often listen to authors and speakers and say, well, they never had a weight problem. Have you ever battled your weight or your health? And what did you find was the key to really taking control of those areas?
Okay, so there's 2 questions there. The answer is yes, I did battle with weight, which was the result of being placed on prednisone, which is a steroid. which increases the weight of anyone who takes it almost immediately. I was the victim of malpractice, medical malpractice, which caused me to suffer respiratory problems. And then eventually I coughed uncontrollably until I was placed on prednisone. And I was on it off and on for about 25 years. So every time I took it, I gained 5 pounds. And late in life, that's not easy to get rid of because it was an accumulation. The other thing that I really learned from this, although it's not a completely new idea for me, but I really learned from this series of health problems to not rely on the mainstream medical establishment. Their model doesn't work. Most of the time, they do more harm than good. They certainly did that to me. And the holistic alternatives that exist right now are so highly developed and so effective that you really should pursue those. For example, I've had about 1,200 acupuncture treatments, and every one of them has benefited me. I've had about 3,000 chiropractic adjustments. If it were not for that, my life would have been completely different.
Wonderful. Now, look, I'm going to open the floor to you. Can you tell people what Septemics is?
Okay. Well, let me first say this. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I crafted a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, which was published in the book called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. It's already been determined from 26 years of observation of this that it will help, significantly help, anyone who takes advantage of the book. So let me explain why. The data in this book are vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the exact location and perhaps also how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get to your destination. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly, so much so that it's considered normal. For example, many years ago, before GPS units, when I started driving extensively, I was surprised to learn how many people did not know geographically precisely where they were, nor exactly how to get to where they were. More often than not, my request for directions to the location of the person on the other end of the phone was requited by vague and often inaccurate instructions, which often did more harm than good. I learned to ask only for the address, which many could not give anyway, and look it up on a map if I got it. Now, if this is so with physical locations, it's even more so with conceptual locations because they are abstract. Most people wander through life aimlessly, whether discussing politics, career, romance, finances, health, you name it. Most people do not know where they are, where they're going, nor how to get there. If you want to improve your or another's condition, these skills are very useful because each is a roadmap for some area of humanity. It enables you to find out precisely where you are, where you're going, and how to get there, given some specific context.
And so how can people really apply this to life? Because it's something that might be quite a new concept. We talk about things being transformational and holistic, as you mentioned in your bio, but I think maybe people don't really know how to put things into practice.
Right. That's why I wrote this book. I worked on this book for 25 years so that it would be foolproof. And I know from the results that I'm getting that it is foolproof. No one who has read this book has ever said anything like, I don't get it, it doesn't make sense, or anything like that. I designed these skills to wrap around the reader. So let me give you an example. Let's say a guy has relationship problems. Who doesn't have that, right? So just off the top of my head, I can recommend 4 skills in this book which are immediately relevant to that. There is a scale of relationships. There are only 6 basic levels of relationship. And when you find where you're at and where your significant other is at, it clarifies the whole thing. There is a scale of permeation. Permeation is what creates love. When two people love one another, they're permeating one another. And when they hate one another, they're not permeating one another at all. When you hate somebody, you don't want to permeate him. Permeation is the basic action of a spiritual being. So again, you could look at that and you can see how much you're permeating and how much the other person is permeating. Then there's a scale of allegiance. Anytime a relationship of any kind deteriorates, it's because allegiance has deteriorated. And this is extremely helpful to see where you are, where the other person is. And there's also a scale of sexuality. If you're not compatible on that scale, the relationship will not work no matter what else you do. So just off the top of my head, those are 4 scales that anybody can take and use to deal with a relationship problem. Now, some people will focus on one scale more than another, but they would all apply. Does that help?
That does help. So you mentioned scales. So what are the other areas that have scales that maybe people need to know about?
Okay, well, let me read you the names of the scales. This will not take long. There are 24 scales which apply primarily to individuals and 11 which apply primarily to groups. These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of illiteracy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of control, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Each of these scales is unique. And because of that, between them, they cover the entire gamut of human phenomena, which is why I can absolutely guarantee there will never be a situation which is not addressed by one or more of the scales in this book. Whatever comes up in your life, you can always find a way to use this book to resolve it. And it was designed in a way, it was written in a way that will be digestible and comprehensible to the average reader.
Great. Now, look, we love freebies here for our listeners. So what can you offer as a freebie and where can they find it?
Well, actually, if you go to my website, which is septemics.com, several passages of the book are available on the website for free. You can also see what readers have said about it, what journalists have written about it, and what the reviews are. So I invite your people to go there and take a look at it, and it certainly will be enlightening on this subject. And then you can see if you want to get involved in it. The book comes in hardbound, softbound, and ebook. The ebook is very inexpensive.
Terrific. Jim, is there something that we haven't covered that you think the listeners need to hear?
Well, let me tell you how I discovered this, because it's very interesting and it really goes to the power of the subject. I worked for many decades as human development engineer, working with clients one-on-one, hundreds of clients for many thousands of hours. And as I was doing this, I started to observe little by little that my clients would improve in ways that were predictable to me. It's not merely that they improved. Of course, they all improved, but I could predict how they would improve. And so I never told this to anyone, but I started taking notes. And by about 1995, I had about 32 scales of varying lengths. In other words, I observed that my clients were going up scales. They didn't know they existed, but they were going up them nevertheless. And as I wrote these down, then I started observing people in life going both up and down these scales. So I had one scale in particular that had 6 levels that I absolutely knew was right. And in 1995, I discovered it had a 7th level. And when I inserted that 7th level into the 6th level scale, it manifested mathematically. Now, coming from a hard science background, this meant a lot to me. I had 26 semesters of math and loved every minute of it. When I saw the mathematical implications of this, I realized I was dealing with natural law. And I said, whoa, this is big. So then I thought to myself, I wonder how many of these other scales are actually 7-level scales, which hadn't been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients. So because I knew what I was looking for, I looked at the remaining 32 scales or whatever it was at the time, and I was able to develop them all fairly easily into 7-level scales. And as each one went to 7 levels, they all manifested mathematically. Now, anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law, like the Pythagorean theorem, or the periodic table of elements, or Newton's 3 laws of motion. Okay, mathematics is built into it. You cannot separate it. There's no such thing as them being not mathematical. So I realized that this would really help people because it's natural law. And because it's natural law, when people looked at these 35 scales, they get it. They get it. It's like you're telling them something that's natural. So nobody says, this doesn't make sense to me, or I don't get it, or this is not relevant, because it's natural law. So then I said, I need to get this to the people of Earth. And so I went from helping people by the hundreds to helping people by the millions by putting out this book. Now, first I had to discover the phenomena, which was mostly done by 95. There were 3 more scales that I discovered as I was writing the book. So the book has 35 scales. Then I had to craft it, or you might say engineer it into a workable philosophic system. As an engineer, the only thing that's interesting to me, or any other engineer, is results and facts. We're not interested in opinions or beliefs. That's not relevant to engineering. So I had to craft this into something that would work every time on every person. And that took a couple of decades. The third thing I had to do was I had to present this in a way that would be digestible. That is not an easy thing. For example, when Einstein presented the specific theory of relativity and then the general theory of relativity 10 years later, he did that in academic papers. He made no attempt to explain that to the general public. He was writing for other mathematicians, physicists. Similarly, when Sir Isaac Newton, father of physics, wrote the Principia, which was the invention of calculus, in order to facilitate the 3 laws of motion, he wrote it for other mathematicians and physicists. This is how it works in that world. But I had a different challenge because I was determined from the beginning to give this to the people of Earth. So I put a glossary, not only in front of every chapter, but even in front of the introduction, to mitigate the inevitable semantic problem that everyone is going to have. And I went through the book literally word by word. It's an 86,000 word book. And in each case said, how are people going to read this? How are they going to interpret this? I used lots of points of clarification throughout the book to make it very clear. And I know I was successful at that from the way people respond to the book. So it's something that's extremely useful to anybody who reads it, if you're interested in self-improvement.
Terrific. Now, people can find out more about Septemics at septemics.com. And what else can they find on the website there?
Well, as I said, it gives many comments from readers of different types. It gives many articles written by a variety of journalists about me and the subject. It gives reviews, and it gives passages or sections of the book, whole sections of the book, chapters are there. So you can read it, you can see how well written it is and how clear it is. Also, my contact information is on the website. So it's SEPTEMICS, and I invite everyone to go there.
Brilliant. Jim, thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom with us. It's been great having you. And listeners, I urge you to go over to that website, check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. I've had a little surf around it today, and I definitely urge you to do that. For now, listeners, thank you for your time. Go forth and create your magical life. Thanks for listening today. Please subscribe to hear future episodes, leave a review, and share this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at A Magical Life Podcast or at Holistic Natural Health Australia. That's holistic with a W. You can find us on Instagram at Holistic Natural Health or at www.holisticnaturalhealth.com.au. That's where you'll access all sorts of articles, freebies, and more.